Hello and welcome to Inside Sports. I'm Wes Decker, and man, it's the last time I get to say that in 2016. This is our second part of the winter sports preview, and it's all basketball today. And we start with girls basketball. That means Herald Mail insider Bob Parsaliti joins me. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
We'll start with Williamsport last year, 21-5 overall. The 2A West Region champions, first ever 2A West Region championship for Williamsport. Got all the way to the state championship game. Would have been a major upset if they could have pulled that off. Now this year they come back minus two key starters, including the Inside Sports and Herald Mail Player of the Year from 2015-2016. So what can we expect this year?
It got a little tougher this past week because one of the people that Kevin Murphy was counting on was Taylor Neff, and she had a knee injury. And they, at that last I talked to them, they didn't know how bad it was, but it didn't look good. So that takes them down one experienced player. I think what ends up happening with Williamsport is that they're going to have to go by the mantra of defense, and I think it's going to be a case of pulling everybody together to do the little things to make things right. They're going to have to figure out how to replace Kate Wade's outside shooting, and Caitlin Murphy might be able to be that person. And they have to figure out how to hit the boards. But they'll have Erin McVicker in the backcourt, and she does a great job orchestrating, so it'll be very interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, and as strange as it sounds, this has become commonplace for Coach Murphy. Now, third straight year that he's going to have to replace an injured front court starter. So will the guards be able to make the difference for Williamsport this year? It almost seems like they're going to have to.
Well, it's kind of interesting. Like we were talking earlier, that this is their team is the equivalent of what South Hagerstown football team was. The top group of players over the last couple of years have graduated, and now you're going down and you're going to see how far all that experience is on the girls that are still around and see how well they work together.
So it's a little bit different when you go from Williamsport over to Smithsburg then, because Smithsburg last year did not have a good year, 10-14 overall, but man, they've got a ton of experience back this year. But they also have an influx of some freshmen who figure to be very prominent players for Coach Chip Bakedale this season. And if you look at it on paper, Smithsburg looks like could be the team to beat in the county.
Well, I think if they can get past out of their own way, let's say, because there were some issues, I think, a little bit out there as far as chemistry-wise. So I think if they can get out of their own way in that, they could go a long way. I mean, they have shooting. They have ball handlers, they have quickness, they have inside players, they have probably the entire package. And, playing in 1A, there's a lot of doors that can open if you play well. I mean, you saw how far Boonesboro went last year with a team that was sort of similar as far as the way the mix of talent it was. They could go places.
Yeah, the depth is incredible for Smithsburg, and the seniors, not only did they return 5 from last year, they get 2 who come back to the basketball arena. So again, are there enough basketballs to go around in the long run for Smithsburg, led by Haley Bakedale, a first-team All-County player from a year ago. But again, it seems like the sky is the limit there. You mentioned Boonesboro, and it's the opposite end of the spectrum for the Warriors this year. 15-9 last year, and I really think Coach Connolly deserves some consideration for Coach of the Year, given all of the injuries that happened last season. But with the players he graduated, a lot of size is gone. And really, when you look at the roster, his daughter coming back, Ellie Connolly, is kind of the only player that is really a given heading into this season for Boonesboro.
Well, I think size is going to be the problem with the Boonesboro. I mean, not only and losing the experience. Sydney Stotler ended up being a monster for them inside. And they lost 3 big players for them through various reasons, graduation and actually moving out of the area.
Right.
And so now they're in an area where they have their best players are their smaller players, it seems like. So they're going to have to figure out a way to get the ball off the glass and get things going, because they're not always going to be able to score from the outside.
Their top 4 leading scorers accounting for about 36 points per game from last season gone heading into this season. North and South Hagerstown, both interesting propositions coming off not so terrific years last season. At North Hagerstown, the whole dynamic there to me has changed on the sideline and on the floor. You have Matt Ryan taking over as head coach, And on the floor, all-time leading scorer Natalie Carlin's gone, but the influx of youth seems to bring a lot of talent there.
Well, I think this is the perfect storm for them because last year they had a lot of girls that were older but didn't have a lot of game experience. And, you bring in a new coach and you have young talent, what better way to teach the fundamentals of teamwork? Because they're all going to need to do it. With Kyria Stubbs and Madison Mertz, both freshmen, they're kind of like the people to build around.
Yeah.
And then you have Lexi Pate, who's coming back, and she's got a little bit of experience. So it could make an interesting dynamic if they can just pull together the teamwork.
Yeah, just 8-16 a year ago, and I mentioned South Hagerstown. Plenty of room for improvement there. Just 1-19 last season.
Well, they have Taja Goodman back, and she's as good a point guard as there is out there. They lose Esses Henderson because she had blown out her knee during volleyball. So they missed that presence on the inside. They get a couple players transferring back in from Goretti, which gives them a little more depth than they had. And they could be a team that floats underneath the radar, I think, just like North High.
Yeah, that's going to be a team that could possibly sneak up on some people before the season's over. Clear Spring, 6-17 last year, but they get their top 3 leading scorers back, so that seems like a positive to build on there.
Well, and they're still sort of young. And the only thing with the top scorers they were all in single digits, so they didn't have anybody that dominated. So that means that if that remains the case, it's going to be got to play some defense, got to hit the boards, and just keep playing in the 30s. I guess how coaches say, well, if it's a game in the 80s, it's a game in the 90s.
Right.
Well, I think Clear Spring has to be a team that says, okay, we score 35 or above, we should win, but we got to play some defense.
Yeah, Hancock, the other public school team, 8-12 last year. Coach Rupenthal will stress defense and the fundamentals there too. In terms of the private schools, I think we talked about it before the show. Looks like Heritage Academy could certainly be the team that is on top, at least to start the season.
Well, they have the most experience coming back, and they put on a good show last year. I mean, fighting through injuries and stuff like that, but they have one of the top rebounders in the county back in Chloe Prejean. They have Michaela Hoy, who is, when she's in that lineup, they seem more dynamic. More things happen when she's got the ball and working with it. So, I mean, she's back and healthy. Leandra Shank and Malin Patey have their strengths. Patey's a pretty good outside shooter. So Dana Henson's, I think, got a pretty good team this year.
Yeah, I certainly considered her for Coach of the Year last year, putting together a 16-11 record for a team that wasn't always together all season. You mentioned the injuries factoring in. Grace has to rebuild a little bit because they lost a 5-2 linchpin in Lindsay Bedrigal, one of the best players in the county, and they had a sensational season last year, but they still have some pieces to work with.
Well, the big piece is Hannah Colvin. She really came into her own at the end of the season. I mean, she was as important to them as Bedrigal was at the end of the year. And if they can find something to blend in around her, they could be okay.
And I think the other 3 private schools, all looking to improve, Broad Fording, St. James, and St. Maria Goretti. And perhaps St. James has the greatest opportunity to do that, again, because of very young players.
They're all freshmen and sophomore. I asked Nate Naylor if they were going to play the JV game before the varsity game every night because they have, all the kids that could be on that team.
Yeah.
And, they're looking for experience. They have some talents. They have Krista Bartlett, who's only a sophomore, and she's in her 3rd year already playing varsity for St. James. So there's some really weird dynamic for experience, but they have some people that could play, and they're going to get a lot of chance to do that.
Yeah, 27 game schedule, 9 freshmen and sophomores on that roster. So that gets you set for girls basketball. Bob, happy holidays. See you back in the new year.
Thanks for having me on.
I'll be back right after this. Boys basketball, the preview for that with Kevin Dunleavy comes your way in just a moment.
Champions are not merely born, they're forged in the crucible that is flag football. With equal parts turf, pigskin, and heart. That's why Buffalo Wild Wings donates to boys and girls clubs across the country to not only help thousands of kids learn about teamwork on and off the field, but to help them fulfill their destiny. To shred defensive lines, terrorize the secondary, and emerge bonded as true champions.
At Hagerstown Ford, we charge less, period. We're the largest Ford store in the tri-state area. #1 for only one reason. We charge less, period. Hagerstown Ford delivers. We'll bring your new ride to you and do the whole deal sitting at your kitchen table. Easy peasy. Get more for your trade, easy on-the-spot financing, and the lowest prices on the East Coast guaranteed. And if we can't beat their deal, we'll buy that car for you. Hagerstown Ford, we charge less, period.
It's here. It's breathtaking. It's ultra fast. Gigabit Internet. Fiber to your home. Fiber to your business. And Tatum Cable, making Hagerstown a gigabit city.
Welcome back to the show. We continue our basketball previews now with the boys, and joining me is Herald Mail insider Kevin Dunleavy. Welcome back to the show, Kevin.
Thank you, Wes.
Time to get started on basketball, and we always begin where we kind of left off last year. We'll start with the public schools and Clear Spring, who went 18-8 a season ago, won the 1A West Region Championship. They had a guy who put them on his shoulders, though, in Spencer Schultz, leading public school scorer in the county, leading scorer overall, third leading rebounder, Inside Sports Public School Player of the Year. He was the Herald Mail Co-Player of the Year. Now he's gone, taking his talents to West Point. So where does that leave Clear Spring?
Well, the cupboard's not entirely bare. They got Jared Lazich, who's got such speed at point guard. And that's a great place to start if you're rebuilding your team. And then Connor Michael, a guy who didn't play a whole lot last year. He was a starter, but I expect him to really step into a greater role and become their big man. And from what he did in soccer, he looks like a good athlete, and he might be capable of being a real primetime player.
Yeah, Coach Hutzel will really have to formulate a plan to offset the fact that he loses 54 of the 65 points that Clear Spring scored in that state semifinal loss to Pocomoke. So it'll take a little doing, but wouldn't put it past them in Clear Spring by any means. Meantime, at North Hagerstown, talk about having to rebuild. Coach Hartman there loses 5 guys who graduated, who at times comprised his starting lineup a year ago. So it really is starting over there for the coach, who doesn't have a real familiarity with the players who are there either, which is sort of strange for him after a 17-win season a year ago.
Yeah, but he's not starting from scratch talent-wise. They've got some good players. Ravon Dillard, we remember him from the football season, really good-looking athlete, wide receiver. He scored 11 points per game last year at Gettysburg, so that's a good place to start. And they've got another transfer, J.R. White from Goretti, who we remember as a really explosive, undersized forward, but a guy who really created havoc on defense.
So again, a couple of cornerstones there coming back. Might take a little time for that team to gel, but North certainly has some talent with which to work. And so does Coach Ryan Grable at Williamsport. His team 15-8 a year ago, was the Inside Sports Coach of the Year. And you talk about getting some guys back and feeling like there are some expectations there. I think that's the way they're looking at things in Williamsport.
Yeah, they lost Michael Riley, who led them in just about everything, but just about the whole rest of the group is back, and it's a good group. And now they've got some size, which they didn't have much of last year. They've got some size from the JV guys that are 6'5", 6'3", and 6'3", and they shouldn't miss a beat. I would think they've got a good chance to repeat and do what they did last year, maybe exceed it.
I think Williamsport believes that they are a guard-centric team. They'll go about as far as those guards can take them, but they certainly will be well prepared for every game. Which brings us to South Hagerstown, and I think Coach Naylor, after seeing his team on the first night, feels a little bit like there's a lot more preparation that needs to take place there. Now, granted, he lost a player in Amir Harris that did a little bit of everything last year, and I think that really showed up in game number 1. But going forward, he still has some players who need to kind of find those roles, and that's what South really needs right now, because they didn't look like a real cohesive unit against Tuscarora.
Yeah, they've got 3 guys back who played significant minutes last year, and I think they're better than they showed last night. I think it was just a bad night. Jeff Wetzel was 1 of 10. He's not going to do that probably the rest of the year again, and because we know he's a good player. He's been a starter for 3 years, and then their wing guys can do some stuff in the backcourt. So it's last night was a tough matchup for them, and I suspect they'll be better as the season goes on.
Yeah, plenty of more basketball to be played before the season is over. Boonesboro, a team that went 9-14 last year, and they had a lot of seniors. They had their top 4 leading scorers graduate, but they get a possible shot in the arm from a transfer from New York.
Yeah, his name is Tyshawn Hanna. He was the second-team player in his league last year in Amsterdam, New York. It's kind of in upstate New York, and sounds like he's a real scorer, and that's what they need because they lost just about all their scoring last year. And they got a good point guard back, Bryce Rogers, who was their 6th man last year and showed a lot of savvy last year, I thought, as a first-year guy stepping in and doing a good job.
Yeah, Coach Ditterman will need some of those guys to step up again. A big scoring void there to be filled, and that's been the case at Smithsburg the last several years. Just 6-17 a year ago, but again, the problem was putting the ball in the basket.
Yeah, I don't think that'll be as much of a problem this year. Cameron Cutchy, real good shooter, kind of came into his own middle last season, and I expect him to take another step forward and really be a good player this year. Devin Bay Wade, also 6'4", another guy who kind of found his legs mid-season, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're significantly better as a team this year, just based on having those 2 guys back. And they played well last year. They played smart last year, I thought. And, I think that'll carry over.
Yeah, Coach Gerber's a tactician. Think back to last year when they upset Clear Spring, when Clear Spring was beating everybody, and he really didn't give Smithsburg a chance. So they always seem to pull one of those out of the hat at least, and maybe this year can be a little more consistent. Hancock a year ago, just 4-18. The only county team on the schedule is Clear Spring. So playing in a new conference, that's probably good for them during the regular season, but will that set them up for the postseason? I guess that's the real question in the end.
Yeah, if it keeps their confidence up, you've got a chance to sustain something and develop some chemistry. And the talent is really going to be tough to overcome because they don't have a lot of it, and the numbers are small. They've only got 16 kids in the program, varsity and JV, but they got a better chance of doing that in that small league to develop get some wins and get something going.
Talent is no question on the private school landscape. We start with St. James, who had a tremendous season a year ago, and even though they graduated the Player of the Year in Grant Golden, boy, that cupboard continues to be full.
Yeah, and they've got 2 transfers, one from Latvia, 6'9", 235, and then they got a kid from Indiana by the name of Austin Butcher, who scored 54 points in the last game he played in Indiana in a playoff game. It's the 5th most points ever scored in a playoff game in Indiana, and that's a basketball crazy state, so that tells you a lot. So they're reloaded, and then Bryce Golden is if he turns out to be similar to his brother, he's going to be he's got so much talent and a lot of skills as well.
Yeah, 25-6 the Saints were a year ago.
Yeah.
MAC champions, IPSL champions. They knocked off St. Maria Goretti, who was 18-14 last season. They already have 2 guys who have signed to go Division I, and the Gales are off to a great start this year.
Yeah, they're playing great, and the big difference is Elijah Clarence. He just didn't look like himself last year. He never got his ankle healthy. He is so explosive. If I had a Player of the Year candidate, I know it's some teams haven't even started yet, but based on what he's done so far, he's the front runner because he is just people can't handle him. They played John Carroll the other day, their league opener, and John Carroll's the defending champion. They had no answer for him, and he's got a good crew around him with Jake Kuhn and a couple other transfers. So they've really, I can't wait to see them play St. James.
Amir Harris, a big compliment to those guys, too.
Yeah, and he seems to be fitting in really well.
Yeah.
As a complimentary player, not having to do everything like he did at South last year.
Yeah, and Goretti having won the MAIT, and again, as I said, just off to a terrific start. Then you got Broad-Fording and Grace. Broad-Fording, again, going to play a lot of games this season and bringing in guys from all corners of the globe, as they often do. And Grace, a team that looks to improve on a season a year ago where they were just 9-18. Heritage also in that mix at 6-18. Those two teams were very similar last year in a way, and they both bring back 4 starters this year and look to improve on that, given the fact that they'll have a little more experience going into this season. So we kind of lay it all out for you. We'll see where the pieces fall as the season develops. Kevin, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Wes.
I'll be back right after this. Our basketball previews are finished, but we're going to talk officiating. Donnie Souders joins me to do that in just a moment.
When it comes to hearing loss, who will be taking care of you? Audiologist Dr. Karen Hamilton is Hagerstown's hearing doctor, working to improve the quality of life for those with hearing loss. At Audiology Services, Dr. Hamilton focuses on evaluation and diagnosis to provide solutions for treating hearing loss. Using the latest technology, she programs hearing aids to meet your unique needs and ensures they fit properly and comfortably. Audiology Services participates with most insurance companies and will check benefits and file claims on your behalf. Dr. Hamilton and her team also serve the community through Hagerstown Hearing, which focuses on providing crystal clear sound in places such as theaters, churches, offices, and homes. Hagerstown Hearing installs looping systems that allows those with hearing loss to enjoy speech clarity and noise reduction, providing an experience like never before. To learn more about Audiology Services and Hagerstown Hearing, call 301-790-3300. Audiology Services and Hagerstown Hearing, providing crystal clear sound.
Welcome back to the show. We continue with more basketball now, and we put a little different twist on it, an element to the game that people don't pay much attention to until something seems to upset them. So I bring in Donnie Souders from the officiating point of view. Donnie, as we begin this 2016-17 season, are there points of emphasis this year that we should know about as fans to perhaps look for more than we have before?
Well, the good thing is there's not a lot of rule changes, but points of emphasis have always been physical play, hands on the ball handler, freedom of movement. You'll hear a lot of that. Uniform. Unfortunately, officials hate being the uniform police, but it's an aspect that we have to do. So I would advise all the parents out there to not go get the sparkly and shiny new stuff, to check with their coach to make sure it conforms. And that's at all levels. We really try to focus on the lower levels of that, so by the time they get to high school, we've remedied that problem. But it's mostly, like I said, post-play, freedom of movement, and then unsporting acts, whether that's players or coaches.
And relative to officiating, what are the things that fans should most keep in mind?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of misnomers when it comes to basketball, as far as you'll hear a lot of fans yell over the back. There's no such thing as over the back. Those words do not appear in the rule book. Reach is not a referee's problem. That's a coaching problem. That's a player not moving their feet. Players can reach all day. They don't make any contact, then it's not a foul. Same way with over the back. If you got a kid that's 6'3" and another kid that's in front that's 5'2", you're going to have a natural height advantage to the 6'3" kid. So yeah, are they over the back? Theoretically, yes, but they're not displacing, which is a word that you hear a lot now in basketball. You're not displacing the player from their spot. When I played, and I was horrible when I played, so that's probably why I got into officiating. But when I played, you were taught to box out by putting your butt onto your opponent and then driving them off, away from the basket.
Sounds like displacement.
That is displacement, and that's a foul.
Okay.
And they're trying to clean it up because it's like Newton's theory that there's a reaction to every action. Well, that's what happens. So if I aggressively box you out, push you off of your spot, now, not only am I getting an advantage from my defender, but then it also leads to maybe perhaps a retaliation where the defender gets frustrated, throws the player to the floor, and the next thing you know, you've got bigger issues to deal with.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because obviously that's something you don't want to have. You don't want anything to escalate at any time. So, given that, say a coach might disagree with something that an official calls. What's the best approach that a coach can take towards an official?
Well, and we try to educate coaches on every official has a different tolerance level. But there are some, I don't want to say automatics, but there's some certainties that'll get it to you. If it becomes personal, you stink, you're terrible, you're horrible, those are pretty much automatic because that's no longer a question. Or looking for an interpretation about something, that's more of a personal attack against the official. If a coach says, hey, Mr. Official, can I ask you something? it's up to the official's discretion whether or not they want to speak to the coach. And we try to educate our officials as well that, hey, if they want to ask you a question about an interpretation or something that you saw or judgment-wise, try to hear them out.
So it can be an open dialogue.
It can be. Now, you don't want it to become a rules dissertation where
Sure.
you're spending 30 seconds trying to explain a rule.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want to show a professional courtesy to the coach because there's nothing worse, and you know this if you've got children or if you've been involved in athletics or any other kind of program, you don't want to feel that your opinion or your voice isn't heard because then that can raise the frustration level as well.
Yeah.
So, what we preach is be professional. I've always said now I serve as president of our association, so I've always told my officials that, if we treat this like a union kind of mentality where if you go out and do what you're supposed to do, you treat the players and coaches with respect and professionalism, if there's an issue, we'll back you up. If you go into a situation, you tell a coach, sit down, shut up, now we've kind of crossed the line where it makes it difficult to do that. But that is something that we're working with coaches on every year to work on better bench decorum because the way that we conduct ourselves should also be a reflection of how the players and student athletes conduct themselves on the floor.
What's the worst argument that you've ever heard when a coach has disagreed with a call? Is there something that sticks out in your mind that's just been the worst thing you've ever heard?
No, I'm going into my 25th year of high school, so there's been a lot of those, and I can assure you that when I started, I was 16, 17 years old working junior leagues. I had a whistle. I was the guy. So I'm sure there was a lot of them that I probably deserved. But I have worked really hard over the last 25 years, as many officials do, to get to a position where you can have dialogue with coaches and it doesn't become, personal or vindictive kind of discussion. I've heard it all. You're amazed. And sometimes it's a difference of opinion.
Okay.
I also talk about coaches and players and fans see the game in the moment. We are taught as officials to kind of see the whole thing. So a player might get bumped, but we're trying to see, does that bump affect their ability to finish the play? If the layup's going to go in and it was a small bump, you let that play through. If it's something that causes a disadvantage to the player, then we want to get it. But most fans, coaches, and players react to what they initially see, and we're taught to kind of see the whole play through. But specific conversations, it's been, as you can imagine, you hear a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm sure if you really tried, you could probably write a book on that after having done it for so long.
Well, yeah, and one of them was from a parent that her husband used to be an official for our association before I even got in.
Wow.
I was in high school and I played sports and I was also in the music program, and I think on my varsity jacket I had music or something, and I remember her yelling down, "You can't referee, you're in the music program." So, and that's 27 years later, you remember little anecdotes like that.
Wow.
But
Clearly,
it
that
happens.
That should preclude you. Donnie, thanks so much for being here today, shedding a little light on some of those things. I think we could do a whole show on this, but appreciate your time today, and happy holidays to you, and we'll look for you on the court.
Same to you. Thank you very much.
I'll be back right after this to close out our final show of 2016 in just a moment.
Tony's Pizza in Williamsport has had the same simple philosophy since 1985. Start with simple products. Sauce from the best Italian tomatoes. The best cheese and dough made fresh every day. Then mix those with a great atmosphere, and you'll have the best dining experience you can find. Tony's is known for their pasta dishes, subs, pizzas, and specialty items like their Nutella Dots and the famous Crazy Tony. Simply put, they want to give the best food they can give to their customers. So stop in today to Tony's Pizza in Williamsport.
Welcome back to Inside Sports. So we're all set for the winter sports season ahead. Look forward to seeing you over the holidays. As a matter of fact, right here's the schedule. I'll be out at 18 different events if you're counting. Hope to see you there supporting our student athletes as they participate in the holiday tournaments and everything that goes on over the holidays. Most of all, have yourselves a very happy and safe holiday season, and we'll look forward to seeing you back after the first of the year. Our first news show will come up on January the 5th. In the meantime, we'll repeat both of our winter preview shows and the fall awards show. So we hope you enjoy those in the interim. Again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Look forward to seeing you in 2017 on The Inside.